So I'm Holden Burns, sitting here today with my great uncle, Eisen Rusty Burns, who I have the honor of interviewing since he is one of the original Tuskegee Airmen. So, what motivated the Tuskegee Airmen?
Well, it wasn't original Tuskegee Airmen, mind you. We were just a bunch of people of color who wanted to have equality in the military services. And I was preceded by a whole bunch of men who paved the way for me, so to speak. What motivated me was to be a pilot. I've always, since I was very young, I always wanted to fly. I wanted to be a pilot, never knowing that the opportunity would ever present itself. So my motivation was my desire to fly.
Why did you decide to fly?
It's just something that interests me as a kid. When I was about 7 years old in New Orleans, Louisiana, where I was born, it was very rare to see an airplane because we lived in New Orleans and the airport was on the other side of Lake Pontchartrain, so we rarely ever saw an airplane. So when you saw one, it was an event. It was something to see. I just fell in love with looking up in the sky and seeing something up there that had no business being up there. Really, that's what it amounted to.
How did negativity weighing you down?
Well, of course, during that period of time, racial discrimination, segregation and discrimination was at a very high point. And although I lived in California since I was a teenager, I had knowledge of the injustice that was prevalent in the South. I knew what segregation and discrimination was like firsthand. So for me, it was something I knew about. I knew how to handle it. I knew where to go, where not to go. A lot of our guys from the North and the West didn't have that education, and for them it was much more difficult than it was for me. But we struggled through everything, from getting in to training. The barriers were always set higher for us. There were quota systems where all of the guys who were capable of flying never got through the service. It was an injustice that eventually was eliminated, really, primarily by our guys who went overseas and made a name for themselves in combat.
Why did you keep pursuing this, even though the white people kept on having negative thoughts about it?
Well, one way to alleviate the condition was to prove yourself worthy of it. That's one way. It's hard to find fault with somebody who does well. And this is, many of us have said, when we've been asked many times by white people, why did we put up with it? Well, this is my country. Even though I may not have been treated well, this was still my country. And anybody who was an enemy of my country was an enemy of me. And eventually, we did it because it was what we should have done.
How did you feel finally with blacks being accepted into the Airmen?
Or accepted? Well, it was something that happened, and you really didn't put it into perspective when it happened, because it should have happened in the first place. It wasn't something that was extraordinary, that didn't have a chance. It was something that should have happened earlier. We had gone through many wars with this country, and most of the time our people had been subjected to menial tasks. In the Navy, our guys were stewards and cooks and bakers and latrine orderlies, and in the Army, they were either construction battalions, or they did have infantry or cannon fodder. So we had been relegated to a menial task in the military, and we didn't think that was fair. And a bunch of our guys got together and decided to change it.
So, did the white give you good tools to succeed in the Air Force?
There were some who did and some who didn't. We were in the South, the heart of the South, which was a very bad place to be. We were restricted to the base. We couldn't leave the base because it was too dangerous outside of the base. The majority population didn't want us there. didn't want us in the service, and it was dangerous for us if we ever left the base. So for the whole year that I was in training, I never left Tuskegee Army Airfield. I had to stay on the base. So the local white people, Tuskegee Institute, town of Tuskegee, for example, were very hostile. But we had white people who were pretty much in our corner. Our base commander, for one, was Colonel Noel Parrish was his name. He was kind of a godsend to us because he was a buffer between us, the military hostility in the military, and the hostility that we found in the local community. He kind of protected us from those things, so they never really got to us. Our instructors, our basic and our advanced instructors, were white officers. They were originally thought that they were sent from Siberia, sent to Siberia rather, but that really wasn't the case. They were all volunteers. Every one of them volunteered to come down to train us. Our primary instructors were black civilian pilots, but all our basic and advanced instructors were white military. And they, for the most part, we didn't have much problem with them. You know, it was an environment that they had to be careful. They had to be careful what they said, because the base commander would not allow any racism from them. And pretty much that's the way it was. They were as dedicated to our success as we were. So in the white community, the majority community, there was good and there was bad. And we profited from the good and we stayed away from the bad as much as we possibly could.